Hello and welcome to Warm Hugs with Suzanne. Thank you for taking the time to bring me into your day today. My guest this episode is coming to us from Sydney, Australia. And she has a long list of things. She's an editor, author, a single mom, a three-time stroke survivor, and truly, she says I know that in something that I've read or heard from Desney, she's actually said that her hope is to be a light in the world. And I can truly say that I think that you are. I'd like to welcome a light in this world, Desney King.
Thank you, Suzanne. What a beautiful introduction. Thank you.
You're very welcome. It's such a pleasure to have you here today. Now, in this episode, we're going to focus on there's a lot to talk about, but we're sort of going to focus on two key areas. The first one is we're going to talk a little bit about strokes, stroke
Yeah.
awareness, and some look at it from not only like a general point of view, but also obviously from Desney's point of view. And then we're going to do a bit of a deep dive into what it means to live a life of intention, why it matters, and then look at some advice as to how we can live a more intentional life, all of us. Now, my hope for this episode is that when you finish listening, you feel inspired, challenged, and cherished. Before we start with any of the information, I just want to ask Desney, how are you checking in today?
I'm feeling surprisingly well today, Suzanne. Thank you for asking. And as you know, my days are very up and down, and I think this is our third attempt at having this conversation. I I live on my bed, as you know, and as people can probably see. Um, and I have occasionally, well, probably 2 to 3 to 4 times a week, I experience myoclonic jerking episodes and dysarthria. So the myoclonic jerking is just really random. Perhaps if people can imagine someone who has severe cerebral palsy, it probably looks a bit like that.
Right.
Uh, and it comes now, these days, it comes with dysarthria, which is the inability to speak. So it's a bit different from dysphagia because I know what I want to say, but I can't speak. So last night I had a severe jerking and dysarthria episode, and quite often the next day I'm absolutely wrecked. So
Right.
I was a little bit concerned, but I woke up this morning and I think, oh, it's random for a start, but also I think I was really excited about talking to you. So the adrenaline's kicked in and yeah, feeling good.
Oh, I'm so glad. I am so glad. And this is it. I mean, as you said, it takes a lot of, and I mean, this is why I chose Desney as well for when we get to the intention part, because I know that you have to be very specific about the amount of energy you have in a day or what you're able to do, and then how you're going to then get it done through the day. So thank you so much. And I'm so glad you're feeling well today. We might have a grocery delivery during this episode, but if that happens, we'll just stop and start playing again. We might then just check out what Disney's ordered for the week. So Disney, as I said in the intro, and as you've alluded to, you live on the bed. Now, there's so much more to you, but I really wanted to talk about the stroke. And the strokes you've had three strokes.
More, actually.
Oh, really?
I've had probably about six or seven more since the third stroke, but it was the third stroke that took away my ability to
Ah,
stand and sit unsupported. So
right.
it was the third stroke that put me living on the bed.
Ah, okay.
So it
Well,
was really significant in
so
that sense.
Desney, I'm starting from like a blank slate here. Can you explain to me and to the listeners today what it means to have a stroke? And do you have any awareness that you're having a stroke? How does it feel?
Well, every stroke is different. I think that's what that's one thing that's really important for your listeners to understand.
Mm,
It's not uncommon for people to have a stroke and they don't realize, and the people around them don't realize. But
right.
uh, and in other situations, it's really obvious because the person's one half of their face drops, they'll collapse, they can't speak, all those things. In my case, I was 60. I was really fit. And I was a book editor. I'd been a book editor for 30 odd years. And at that time, I was working from home, freelancing. I'd finished a 9 month, extremely challenging project only about 3 weeks prior. And I was doing something really lovely. I was just doing assessing a manuscript for a young man who'd written a novel. And so
Right.
I was writing the final report. It was 10 o'clock on a Thursday morning, the 23rd of February, 2012. You don't forget these things.
No.
And I was immersed in my work, absolutely immersed in writing the report. I had an hour to go. Um, and suddenly I felt horrendous. It was like a lead flow that just flowed from the top of my head down through my body and just took all my energy with it. I just the right top quadrant of my lip went completely numb. And as it was happening, it was very fast.
Yeah.
And as it was happening, I thought, I'm having a stroke.
Wow.
So I knew instantly. And then I thought, oh, no, 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 but I've only got an hour to finish this report. I've got to I'll deal with it in an hour. I'll do. But what I've realized, and this I think is very common for a lot of people when they have a stroke, is that you think you're completely lucid, but you're actually very confused.
Right.
And I certainly was because apparently I was at the emergency department of my local hospital in an hour from the time that that had happened.
Yeah.
So a lot happened in that hour, not the report writing. um,
But and were you cognizant of anything that happened?
well, I thought I was. I
Yeah.
thought I, but I didn't. I got very fixated on. I was living in a fifth floor apartment in a security building, and apparently, my daughter said later that night, she told me when I was in hospital that there were 5 tabs open on my laptop
Yeah.
for stroke victims. I have zero recollection of doing that.
Yeah.
I do remember ringing a health line and talking to a nurse who said, yes, it sounds like you're having a stroke. You need to get to hospital straight away. Um, but I got very fixated, and this seemed to take hours in
Yeah.
time, but obviously didn't. Um, I couldn't work out how. paramedics could get to me in my building.
Of course. How would they get in
And
the door?
how would they get in the door? How would they get in the front door? How would they get in my deadlocked apartment door? And um, I also, because my desk was in my bedroom, and I really just desperately wanted to lie down. I was
Mm,
struggling to hold myself upright on my office chair, and I had a really intense intuition that if I lay down, that'd be it. I would never get up again. My
wow.
daughter would come home and find me dead on the bed.
Yeah.
So, so I stayed on it, and eventually I thought, I rang my daughter. She was working half an hour away by train. Oh, I rang my son, who was just 10 minutes away by
Hmm.
car, but he didn't hear his phone. So I rang my daughter. She just handled everything. She was amazing, absolutely amazing. She was 20,
Yeah.
and um, she was as calm as anything. And she just said, "Do you think you can use your chair as a wheelie walker, mum, and just sit on the chair and just slowly walk it, wheel it towards the intercom for the building.
Yeah.
And I'm going to stay on the phone with you, but I'm going to use another phone and phone Sam's work." Anyway, she did all that, and she just kept me on the phone and saying, "You're doing so well, mum," and so on. And somehow, I don't. I just remember that, and then I
Yeah.
remember my son was there with me. So
My goodness, Disney, you've already given me chills twice since you're talking. I'm like, how does this happen?
how did
Wow.
I can't explain either, Suzanne, because there are just it's in chunks
Yeah.
of memory. And what I do remember was that this thing of working from home. I hadn't had a shower. I was still in my pajamas. And it was, by that time, whatever, 10:30 in the morning or what. And I was so embarrassed. And I insisted on getting changed, which was hilarious. Later, it turned out to be hilarious. It turns out I got changed into a really old t-shirt and daggy old track pants, which probably the pajamas were better. Anyway, I remember that. I remember something about my son saying it was better for him to take me in my car because it'd be more comfortable
Right.
than his ute. Um, and I remember being on the highway in the car with Sam, my son, and him saying, I think you're going to be fine, Mum. You're hardly slurring your words at all."
Wow.
And I was not aware that I was slurring my words
Yeah.
at all. Um, I've spoken to him quite recently about that, and it's coming up for 13-year anniversary very soon.
Yeah.
Um, he has zero recollection of any of that, none.
Mm.
Um, but we got to the hospital. There was no one in the emergency ward, so there was all this incredible. It was as though I was being looked after.
Yeah.
No one waiting. Don't know. Sam, all right, were triaged very quickly, and I was on a bed within an hour
Yeah.
of that first feeling of,
That feeling. So that feeling of like the lead coming over you, did
yes.
that last for very long?
No, it just was
That was just
sudden
like
and
a
rapid,
wow.
and then it was just I was I had no energy, and it was as though my spine had dissolved.
Yeah. So that's, but that's not, you're saying that, so, well, I'm gonna actually, I don't even need to ask about other people. Is that how it has then felt in each subsequent one?
Yes.
So it's that
Yeah.
same feeling. But is that what other people experience as
Very
well?
common. There's sort of uh, just a feeling of all my energy draining out. I never got that heavy feeling again,
Yeah.
but on each subsequent, well, not true. On some of the subsequent occasions, and that third um, stroke, which was in a
Yes.
way, well, the second most significant one, I definitely felt all my energy drain out, and I couldn't walk.
Right.
Um, but quite a few of them happened while I was asleep.
Oh,
Um,
right.
and I would get up the next morning, and it's strange because your body goes on automatic, and I would sort of stagger walk to my kitchen and get to my kitchen with very, very tiny apartment.
Yeah.
At that, moved into a retirement village, tiny little unit, and then I'd get to the kitchen and realize I couldn't really stand up, and
Mm.
realize I'd had another stroke, and
Wow.
stagger back to the bed, and yeah.
Yeah. Now, Desney, what is there a is there something that has made you more prone to it, or is there what
There was a cause. The cause was diagnosed in the emergency ward, um,
that
and
first
this is,
time?
yes, the first time, and this is really important for people to understand. About 20 to 25% of strokes are caused by atrial fibrillation, which is a heart condition
Hmm.
where your heart beats irregularly. And in my case, it was what they call paroxysmal, which is occasional, basically. So
Right.
not it has become constant in recent years, but at the time, and it was undiagnosed.
Right. So you
So,
didn't know.
and what happens is that the heart, in simple terms, with AF, atrial fibrillation, AF, the heart goes boom, 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 and then pauses. And while it's pausing, blood pools in the chambers of your heart and starts to clot. And then when your heart starts racing again, it shoots those clots up into your brain.
Okay, we are back. Desney has had her grocery delivery. Now, yes, we were talking about, you were saying that for you, you were having the stroke because of the your atrial fibrillation with your heart. Um, but that's not the only cause of a stroke.
No, no. And it's very common. It's very common for people with high blood pressure
Uh-huh.
to have strokes. So that's why doctors jump on high blood pressure a lot because
Right.
uh, so high blood pressure is an indicator. Being unfit and overweight can be an indicator, not necessarily. And some people just have brain bleeds. So
Right.
you would hear. So there are two kinds of stroke. There's a kind of stroke where there's a bleed into the brain that kills off a whole area of the brain, or there's a clot or clots into the brain that
Right.
a whole chunk of the brain.
Right.
Um, and um, so high blood pressure, and uh, it can be a bad knock on the head that can cause it, of course,
Hmm.
or a ruptured brain aneurysm,
Right.
a little
Gosh,
bubble
so
in.
there's a lot of things. There's not like there's no like, take vitamin C and
No,
you'll
no,
you won't
no,
have a
no.
stroke. So the best, I guess I'm thinking from what you're saying, like one of the best things is just to be aware of what those symptoms are if you do have it and make sure you get help straight away.
That's absolutely true, Suzanne. And have a good GP. Get
Right.
all those things checked regularly.
Hmm.
if your GP is worried about your blood pressure or whatever it is and suggests, they will typically suggest that you take medication to lower your blood pressure and a blood thinner,
Right.
or an anticoagulant, so that it helps to prevent those clots forming.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. But
So
in you having had so many, did the
uh,
medication not work or?
I'll get back to that, but I was just going to say something very important too is that strokes can happen at any age. They can actually happen. A baby in utero can have a stroke.
Wow.
But people of any age
Hmm.
can have a stroke. People who are really fit can have a stroke.
Mm.
Um, you don't necessarily, they can just happen. So
Right.
you do all those sensible things that we've just discussed. Um, but just stroke doesn't discriminate.
Right.
It can
And
happen
if
to.
you, so, and some of the main things that most people feel then are like, well, you have the slurring of the words and the one side of the face, or?
It's yeah. The acronym is FAST, so it's face, arms. So I can't really, but can you lift your arms sideways up
Right.
above your
Hmm.
head? A, C, C. Um, I
Chest.
can't
Is it
remember.
chest? I have no idea.
Oh, it's S. Sorry,
Oh,
fast.
fast. Yeah, I'm thinking face as well.
Uh, well, I probably said that. Um, I have cognitive damage from the strokes. So
I don't even
fast,
have that excuse.
face, arms, speed. So get to hospital as fast as possible.
Ah,
Because in certain cases, there is now a clot busting medication that can be that doctors can use. They can do surgery
wow.
straight away and actually dissolve the clot. Really, if you get to the hospital very quickly,
Fast enough. Okay.
yeah, fast enough,
Yeah.
um, it, there are people who've had a major stroke but have been eligible, and there are a lot of things that make you eligible or ineligible
Hmm.
for that treatment.
Hmm.
Um, and then they just walk out of hospital the next day as though nothing happened.
Right. Wow. My goodness. And
But
what's the T?
they're in the minority. So, and what happened? And the other thing is speech. That's
Yes.
the other. Both speed and speech.
Oh, right. Okay.
Speech is slurred
Yes.
or garbled.
Hmm.
It depends what part of the brain's been affected by the
Hmm.
bleed or the.
Or the clot.
Thank you. I was going to say blob. You're getting a perfect demonstration of cognitive impairment. Um, and T is time. So
Right.
so I think S is speech.
Yeah.
Anyway, no, we've got there.
Yeah.
Yeah, take action
Love
straight away.
it.
And and I think if you're at a social event or whatever, and someone says, "Oh, I don't feel very good. I think I have to sit down," and their face starts to drop,
Mm.
or just call an ambulance, or
Yeah.
get them to hospital as fast as you can. If they're not having a stroke, well, it doesn't matter.
Yeah. At least you've done something. And don't care about what you're wearing.
Care about what you're wearing because the minute they get you on that hospital bed, they take everything off and put you in a hospital gown. So,
That's it. I love it. I love it though, because it's just, well, I don't know, it just seems like such a feminine thing to think
yeah,
of as well.
yeah.
You know? Sort of like, oh, I haven't got my lippy on, you know? Oh, Desney. Okay. Well, hopefully, I'm hoping that, I don't know, anyone who doesn't know who, like, hopefully that inspires people to look up some stroke information more as well. And it really has, it's really enlightened me um, into how it all feels and everything as well. But now, one of the things that we were talking about earlier, or that we mentioned was, well, and you've said that, you don't now you're limited. You feel like, you're limited. You live on your bed now.
Yes.
And you might have one of these episodes where then it just saps all your energy the next day. And this is where I was saying that when I thought about this episode being on intention and why it matters to live intentionally, why I thought of you. And I wanted to start off because I thought when I mention intention to a lot of people, they're like, what on earth do you mean? What does living with intention mean to you, Desney?
Well, I had a bit of that same reaction, I
Mhm.
have to say, Suzanne, because I guess it, is it fair to say I call it purpose?
Mm.
Is that is that the
Yeah.
same thing?
Yeah, I definitely. You know what? I actually, because all of these questions I ask you, I ask myself first.
Yeah.
And yes, I think, like for me personally, I think of intention as sort of like the why
Yeah.
behind everything you're doing in life.
Okay, that's a great way of describing it.
But that's
So,
that's exactly the same. Like, that's the same as like purpose. Like, what's the
what
purpose?
keeps you going?
Sorry.
What keeps you going?
That's right. That's right.
What is your reason for living, and how do you make that happen?
That's
Uh,
it. That's
yeah.
it. But it's not some, I guess like the whole living with intention. Some people I feel sometimes, say when you talk about having a purpose or something, it's like this giant lofty goal. But it comes down to an everyday thing. And that's where I feel like you've got it really, where you do it really succinctly as well, because each day you have a limited amount of energy, you have
Yes.
a certain amount of time, and you have to figure out what you're able to do within that time that is then aligning with your purpose and your goals.
Absolutely, Suzanne. And do you know, after that third stroke, I had a couple of years where I was extremely isolated and just living on the bed,
Hmm.
and I couldn't even go out because so during that time I got an emergency. I finally succumbed. I got an emergency
Oh,
uh,
yes.
health, button
Right,
to call the ambulance if necessary,
right.
and I have used it, and it's fantastic.
So just for anyone who's not watching, Desney was just showing me that it's sort of like a watch thing on her wrist.
Yeah, or it can be a pendant around your neck. So, but it's
Right,
just a button that you push, and it's Bluetoothed to a base station.
right.
Nice person comes on and says, "Desney, do you need some help?" And then they
Hmm.
have all your contact information, and they call an ambulance and they talk to
Beautiful.
you. So it's a very good thing to have. Anyway, I've sidetracked myself, which I do a lot. Which is why okay. So, but during those 2 years, I really had to reflect on what my purpose was in being here anymore. What was the point in
Mm,
just being here on the bed?
yeah.
The primary purpose that came to me, and always has, I think, and you're a mom, so, and a lot of our listeners probably are parents, was to be here for my children.
Hmm.
so that so my children, because as you mentioned, I was a single mum for a lot of my children's lives, and in fact, they only lived with me every second week. So
Right.
we haven't particularly, um, very fortunately, we have a particularly close relationship, the three of us. And I felt that they'd been through such a lot already in their lives at the age of, early 20s, that I didn't want them to have to deal with their mother dying
Mm.
at that age as well. Um, that was a really driving force. But beyond that, I've always been an activist and um, I don't know, a giver,
Yeah.
you know, doing things for people, helping other people, etc., etc. All of that was stripped away. Everything was stripped away. So was the lipstick. So was the mascara. Everything. And if anybody is watching this, so was the hair.
Yeah.
Um, anyway, um, I also have been a meditator for a long time, for nearly 40 years now, and a mindfulness and gratitude practitioner. And I worked with those practices a lot. I worked with those practices every day.
Mhm.
Um, and I also have been, I don't know whether you know Julia Cameron's book, The Artist's Way.
I do.
And I'll mention it again later if we have time. But in it, the key activity she suggests is writing morning pages every day. And I have been writing morning pages every day for over 22 years.
Wow.
So those practices that very fortunately were already part of my life when everything else got stripped away by the strokes
Hmm.
stood me in very good stead. And through my morning writings and through meditation and through just focusing on why am I here? Why am I here? I can't do anything. And the message that came to me, and it does sound a bit woo woo, and so be it. But the message that came to me was to radiate light. And in fact, that is the reason every single one of us is here on the planet. Our primary purpose, and it should be our primary intention, our constant intention, to shine a light in the world. And that can be the simplest thing. It can be just saying please when you ask somebody for something in the shop, just saying thank you when somebody does a little thing for you. Um, just smiling at somebody, a stranger in the street, or smiling, yeah, smiling when you might not even feel like smiling.
Yeah. So
Even smiling at animals.
how were you able to still like I guess I'm thinking there might be people who are thinking, well, but if you're stuck on your bed, how are you going to do that, Desney?
How did I do that? Okay. So I did that by really at that time, in those were two what I call the horrible years, because
Yeah.
in Australia, as you know, but some of our listeners might not know, we now have the National Disability Insurance Scheme.
Hmm.
And after the 2.5 years or whatever it was of horrible years, just stuck on the bed, I was fortunate enough to be accepted into the NDIS, into that scheme. And that changed everything. But before that, when I had that first stroke, because my children and my friends and so on they were really worried by that stage that I was going to die in my sleep,
Yeah.
just
Yeah.
so I started a new ritual, um, which was to get up, use my walker. So I'd started using a walker by then, a walking stick or mainly a
Hmm.
walker. Go out onto my little balcony, take a photo of the sunrise, and post it onto Facebook with a good morning and an emoji of the earth and the sun or clouds or whatever the weather was like, and another emoji of the earth. So that it was always and that meant that everybody who cared about me knew that I was alive, I could get out of the bed, I could make it to the balcony, and I was with it enough to post to Facebook. And I've been doing it every day since. And when I when I arrived at um, that understanding of my purpose being to shine a light into the world, I also realized that that's what I was doing. Okay, I couldn't do much,
Yeah.
but every morning I did that with that photo.
Yeah.
And more, and still today, people will put comments saying, "You've changed my whole mood for the day.
Hmm.
You've made me pause and be grateful for the day. Whatever they say." Or they'll say good morning back to me, or it aids connection as well. So um, that was the main way, really, at
Yeah.
that time, to keep in touch with my children. To um, yeah, to just message and phone
Yeah.
them really, or vice versa, really regularly.
And it really is. I mean, it's, that is setting your intention
Yes,
to radiate light to the world
yes,
and starting every single day in that way.
yeah,
And it has multiple purposes,
yes.
but but that's what it does. And it's just such a, I don't know, it's such a beautiful thing. And I can attest to it because I've already seen your post from this morning. So
There you go.
I get your post in the afternoon, but I've seen your post from this morning. And it also gives me, I love it as well, because it also gives me a hint into what the weather's like in Sydney each day.
Ah, lovely. Yeah, yeah. It's funny. People talk about the weather where they are quite a bit in the comments. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
That's
So,
right.
it engages people, and yeah. Um,
So, how do you think that our listeners can live their life with more intention?
okay, so I think routine. Well, I understand that everybody's lifestyles are very different. Um, but for me, now that I've got support workers and a wheelchair, and I can get out a little bit, but also I'm aging, and so the issues of aging are piling on top of my the impact of strokes.
Yes, yes.
Um, Routine is crucial for me. I would highly recommend that if people haven't heard of Julia Cameron's book, The Artist's Way, she's written a lot of books now and she runs courses and all sorts of things, but really all you need is that original book,
Yes.
write morning pages. And the purpose of it took me a while to work this out, but the purpose of doing it first thing in the morning, if you possibly can, is that you're putting value on yourself. You put yourself first.
I
You
love
take
that.
time to tune in with yourself, to be honest with yourself. It's stream of consciousness. You can process all sorts of stuff. So you're self nurturing at the beginning of the day.
Mhm.
Um, for me, routine is very important in terms of prioritizing. So I have a paper diary and everything's written in pencil. so that I can reprioritize as the day goes by, as my energy wanes or doesn't wane, or
Yes.
etc. But I'd highly recommend lists and some kind of a diary, or some kind of a written, whether you use a calendar
Mm,
or
mm,
whatever it is, and prioritizing
yes.
important for each day. And
Yeah.
it might be simple, it might not be go and buy a new dress. It might be phone my sister or
This is it.
my neighbor or
Th-
whatever it is that is a priority for you. So prioritize that list. There's enormous satisfaction in ticking things off the list. Enormous.
I totally agree. I totally agree. I'm such a ticker. Or I'd like to do the big line through it.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I'm a
Yeah.
line through it rather than the tick.
At the end of the day, I just put a wiggly line through it, which means, oh well, it didn't happen. And I'll and sometimes that wiggly line means, oh, it didn't happen and it wasn't important anyway.
That's right.
Or I'll write it on another day and have another go.
That's
Um,
right. And I
but with
guess, oh,
oh, the,
sorry.
no, go on.
Sorry, Disney. I was just going to add to your list that I guess again, it's writing that list. And I mean, you're saying prioritize. And I guess I'm saying as well, another way to word that when we're talking about intention, well, with my definition of it, is to ask yourself why it's important.
Yes,
Why
yes,
is that important?
yes.
One of the things, for example, I know that one of the things, it's my youngest son's favorite thing to do is actually to go and throw the American football around.
Okay.
And, in a day where there's so much stuff to do, and I'm just, or I might be doing stuff and then I'm tired or something, I think, oh gosh, and sometimes it's like, do I really want to? But then for me, part of that intentional living is thinking, wait, he's like, my children are my top priority. And
Yes,
this is quality time for him. It is a time when we are outside, we are doing something just the two of us. There are no phones, there are no other interruptions. Even if it is 5, 10 minutes, even if I say, look, I've only got this amount of time, why am I doing it? I'm saying yes because you are my priority.
yes, yes. And you're absolutely right, Suzanne. I'm so used to doing it that the why is always there for
That's
me.
it. That's it.
Always there for me. Why am I prioritizing this? Because it's a medical appointment
Yes.
and I have to go to that, or because my support worker is arriving at 10 a.m. and I need to be showered and dressed, or why am I, you know.
Yeah.
Um, but also, it starts with the why am I still, after more than 10 years, posting that morning photo?
Yeah.
And the reason remains the same and it's broadened, so it is, yes, still prioritizing my children first and foremost and my friends, but now all those other Facebook and Instagram friends and followers for whom it's become part of their day as well.
Yeah.
So that's the why,
Yeah.
because other people are benefiting from it and other people value it. And that makes me feel good. But another big why for me that I review constantly is how much energy is it going to use? How much energy have I started out with today?
Hmm.
And have I got the energy to do those three things that are on my phone? So, clear example, I've got a rule, and even for healthy people and busy people and whatever, I think I think this is worth considering, or a version of this is considering, that when I do go out, which involves having booked a support worker, them arriving on time, setting up my wheelchair, it has to be assembled and
Yeah.
dismantled, blah, blah, blah. It's a whole big deal. Um, um, I've forgotten what I was going to say. Oh no, the rule. The rule. I have a rule which is based on the why, and the why is making sure I have enough energy
Hmm.
to get, to have dinner and get myself ready for bed and whatever, when I get back. So the rule is one place, one job.
Nice.
One place, one job. And when I break that rule, I always suffer. I always,
All hell breaks loose.
I
Yeah.
just, well, it means quite often that I can't actually get myself out of my wheelchair. I need
Right.
help transferring, lifting. Somebody else has to lift my legs onto the bed. Um,
So you know your limitations.
I know my limitations, but the other thing I haven't spoken about that I think so important, Suzanne, and that is acceptance.
Mm.
So accept your reality, whatever your reality might be, accept it and don't waste any energy, even if got heaps of energy. Don't waste any of it on what ifs or if onlys or worrying about the future. Or so live mindfully,
Yes.
living in the moment, being fully present in every
Yes.
moment as possible.
Yeah.
So you're in the back of your mind, you're always aware of the why and the priorities.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And and I think, and this is not even, I guess for anyone who's listening who might be thinking, yeah, oh, this is just if you're not feeling well. No, this is like we're talking about life skills. We're talking about skills in business. We're talking about in relationships. We're talking about with everything. With
Parenting.
every, that's right. Accept your reality.
Yep.
Ask yourself why, like prioritize what needs to, write down what needs to be done,
Yeah.
and ask yourself why. If I've got 50 things on my list that need to be done today, why? Why have I got those 50 things there? You know,
Exactly.
that's and is something dreadful going to happen if I don't get those 8 loads of washing put away today?
No,
No.
no.
Don't worry, I thoroughly believe that nothing bad will happen with that one. Sometimes I let it wait for a bit too long.
One thing also to remember is to ask for help.
Yes.
Ask for help and graciously accept help,
Mm,
because when you're gracious in accepting help, that's a gift to the person who's helping you.
definitely.
Absolutely amazing. People like to help.
Yeah.
Most people.
Yeah.
And
That-
if you instead of saying, "Oh no, no, I'll be right. I can manage it," like, if you say, "Oh, thank you, that would be so nice," the other person gets a really warm glow from that.
that's right. That's
So
right.
it's a gift. It's a gift that goes both ways.
That's precisely it. And if that thing that you're talking about is such a priority, then be brave enough to ask for help with it because that's okay because that person you're asking is going to understand why that's important to you.
Yes, yes,
So I think that hopefully we've made enough sense for people to understand what this means. I know that it is sort of like this weird concept that I'm saying. Intention, and why does intention matter? But I feel like with all of these podcasts as well, I like to sort of, I think of it as the planting of the seed.
Yes.
Hopefully the listeners, as I said at the beginning, are inspired, not only inspired by you and your story, but and then challenged to look into this thing, to think about their intention, to even when you wake up in the morning, and I know so many of us do it these days, wake up in the morning and the first thing we do is get our phone rather than write our morning pages. But you get your phone. I guess I'm challenging my listeners when they wake up tomorrow, whenever that might be, ask themselves why they're picking up their phone first thing in the morning. Why is that the most important thing to you?
Yep.
And do you know, sometimes, I mean, and sometimes I do it, sometimes I don't do it. But very often on the days that I do it, for me, I actually check my phone first thing to just see if my mum and dad have left a message and if they're okay. So,
Same, same. If there's anything there, I just check my message to make sure there's nothing from my children.
yes,
So to check the time,
that's it.
because sometimes I wake up so 4 o'clock in the morning or whatever, and I think it's 6 or 7,
Yeah.
and I look at my phone and it's 4, and I think, oh, no, go
Yeah.
back.
Precisely. So it's not necessarily a bad thing. We're not saying it's a bad thing to check your phone, but think about why you're doing it. And then maybe if
So,
you go to like start scrolling,
yeah,
maybe when you can stop yourself and think, hey, what are these morning pages Desney was talking about? Maybe I'll look into that.
absolutely, and just good nutrition. Make sure you
That's
prepare
right.
a healthy breakfast or your coffee or whatever it is that actually might be more important to you than scrolling and getting lost down whatever rabbit hole on
That's
your
right.
phone.
That's
Absolutely.
right. That's
Yeah.
right. Now, Desney, I don't want us to run out of time without talking about. There's two key things I wanted to talk about with you. And I know that there's a long story that goes with, there's so much that goes with this. But how I actually came to know Desney was this is going back quite far. But, well, for those who don't know it about me, I was, I used to do book reviews for a local newspaper and also online.
Ah,
Yes, Disney. I don't think you. Disney's couldn't even remember how she knew me. So I used to do book reviews. Mariah and me. I used to do it with my mum, and
yes.
Disney. So I don't know where you saw me. Whether I think it was probably through the newspaper, but Disney contacted me and sent me her book because, as I mentioned at the beginning, Disney's an author. And it's called Transit of Angels. So you wrote that it was published in 2020. So I think it was straight away when it first sort of came out that you had it, that you sent it to me. And I read it and I did a review for it. Loved it. And I was actually blown away as well because understanding what you went through and all of these like near death experiences that you've had. But then finding out that you actually wrote the book, which deals with quite a bit with death,
Yes.
before you had any of these experiences
True.
was sort of a bit mind blowing because I thought, wow, okay. So in the book, it deals with dealing with the death of a loved one.
Yeah.
Um, but it is a fabulous read. And I know I'm running out of time a bit here because I just wanted to highlight it. So, Transit of Angels, look it up. Desney is a brilliant writer. And I was so excited to hear that I thought she was then, that she has since been writing her memoirs and was hopefully going to be publishing her memoirs. But there's been a bit of turn of events there. And
Yes.
now, now Desney is speaking life to her memoirs in Life on the Bed with Desney. Would you like to just tell me a little bit about that?
Yes, Suzanne. Look, very briefly, again, about a year ago, I realized that I just couldn't write a straight narrative anymore. My brain, I couldn't do it anymore. Um, and started writing the memoir again as a series of tiny little bits and pieces. And that's still ticking along in the background, whether it ever happens or not. But then stuff happened with my neurological issues, the jerking and dysarthria I
Mm,
mentioned were getting worse. Found a new neurologist, fabulous, and she has recommended a whole series of treatments that might just help a little bit.
right.
So I made a conscious decision to stop working on the memoir then while I focused on here we are with priorities and why, because I can only really write the memoir if some of these treatments do help
Right.
to improve my condition a little bit. Okay. So, but my creative urge was wouldn't go away. It wouldn't go away. And and just I just decided I needed to learn how to make reels for Instagram and Facebook. And so I found a support worker through my network who does just that.
Yeah.
That's her background. And very quickly, she had me up and running. And um, so every Sunday, Sydney time, we post a lengthy, sort of 5 to 10 minute talk about life on the bed with Desney. It's taken on that branding now because the Australian Stroke Foundation has asked to collaborate with me,
Wow.
and
Yeah.
very soon, or in the next few weeks. Um, and it's completely honest. So it's exactly as I am now, just on the bed, talking about issues that are priorities at the time, I
Hmm.
guess, and why they're important, and whether I think they might be able to help other people and be of use to other people. And
Yeah.
funny stories, or just an brief example of what disaster is like, or um, without terrifying people too much. Yeah.
So I'm,
So,
well, I'm going to, on the bio or the link, whatever you're listening to or watching this with, I'll write down so you can follow Desney on Instagram and on Facebook.
yeah, Desney King author
Yeah.
on Instagram and just Desney King on Facebook. Yeah.
Beautiful. And that's the best way to stay in contact with Desney. And then you can even possibly message her and ask her to be on your podcast. And then magic happens.
Magic happens.
But you know what I love as well, Desney, is that none of it has held you back.
No.
And as you say, I mean, you talk about the dark years, the two dark years, and I mean, you've just gone through so much, but you've found that purpose. You've set that intention. You know what you want. And even when you can't, even when you want to tell your story, but then you can't do it because your body's not cooperating, you find another way to do it. And well, I think that this as well, hopefully, and you touched on it earlier as well, and I totally should have even guessed this about you because I didn't know all of it about you. But I think that this is a key. And I mean, I've spoken about some of these things on past episodes, and I'm sure I'll be touching on more of them in the future as well. But things you're saying, for example, like your meditation.
Yes.
like gratitude, mindfulness, and your morning pages. That is I mean, that's something that I spoke about with in an earlier episode as well, because that book keeps coming up too. And I think for me, one of the things that when I do morning pages on and off. And once I saw I wish I'd taken a screenshot of it because I can never find it again. But I saw just like this little cartoon, and it was a picture of someone with like just a big muddle of lines and mess above their head.
Yep.
And it was like, I think they were calling it journaling, but these are the similar sort of thing, the morning pages. And it was like my brain without journaling.
Yep.
And then and then there is the same person with just like, a nice box or something above them. And then
Yep.
it says my brain with journaling. And I thought it was the most simple way to say it. And it was just so perfect. All of these things are not magic pills. They're not going to make you happy automatically just by doing them, but they give you the tools to be able to get to a better place if you give them a try.
And if you practice.
That's right.
Well, it's called a spiritual practice or a lifestyle practice or whatever. The more you do it, the easier it gets, the more important it becomes to you, and the
Yes.
more it becomes a natural part of your intention every day.
Yes. That's it. That's it. And I remember someone, oh, now I've lost my train of thought, but I remember, I remember someone sort of saying as well that, you practice when you feel good
Yes.
so that you know. It's like practicing with a screwdriver
Yep,
when your mind's working, so that when you're in an emergency situation and you need a screwdriver, you know what to do.
exactly.
So
Absolutely.
this is it. It's there. It's so simple, yet so difficult sometimes if people don't decide
It
to do it.
requires awareness and then the setting of that intention and then practicing it,
That's right.
sticking with
That's right.
it. And then it becomes joyful, really. Even on a bad day, you can rustle up some gratitude from somewhere, you know.
That's right. Oh, Desney, thank you so much. It has just been such an honor to speak to you. And I really have. I've had goosebumps so many times talking to you. And I feel like we could talk for ages. But thank
Like,
you. Thank you for giving your energy to us and prioritizing us today. I really, really appreciate it. Everyone, look up Desney's book, look her up on Instagram and Facebook. And it was a real pleasure. Thank you for having us. And oh, one more thing. As always, please, if you liked the episode, like, subscribe, comment. Even if you can't comment on whatever you're listening on, send me a message on Instagram or something and let me know what you thought. And that's a fabulous way for me to know how I'm going as well.
thank you so much, Suzanne. It's been an absolute pleasure. And of course, it was a priority. Thanks.
Thank you. Until next time, everyone, this is Warm Hugs with Suzanne.